wormholes, particle physics, extra dimensions. Are the wonders of so-called reality really what they appear to be? Or do we exist in an elaborate hologram? Is our universe the result of random activity or the result of intelligent design? If a creator was involved, can we discover him through our perception of divine order? This is Into the Multiverse with Josh Peck.
You're going to need a bigger multiverse. Well, here to get a bigger multiverse is my lovely wife, Christina Peck. I keep putting these on you.
Yeah, I'm the one that has to do everything around here.
Yeah.
I gotta figure out different multiverse with a box of multiverses.
Yeah.
I gotta give a multiverse.
You gotta give a multiverse. You gotta talk about multiverse because we don't talk about multiverse.
And I gotta get a bigger
and
one.
now you gotta get a bigger multiverse.
Right.
Well, you get on that.
All right.
Today, this week, we are talking about CERN in prophecy. In case you are new to the show, this is Into the Multiverse. I am your host, Josh Peck, alongside my lovely, beautiful wife, Christina Peck. And if you haven't had a chance to do so already, subscribe to us on YouTube. And where can they find us online? YouTube and everything.
All right. Oh, well, okay. Well, first off, you can go to YouTube. And we are youtube.com/Skywatch TV_official. You can also go to skywatchtv.com to find out more. And we're also on Roku.
Fantastic. So, CERN in prophecy. I imagine most watching are probably at least have a base understanding of CERN and what it is. It's the home of the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, that collides particles to make other particles. And, you know, there's a lot of people wondering what dangers might come out of that. You know,
right, yeah.
Is a black hole going to open?
That was a big thing back in like 2008 when they're like, oh, it's going to take 4 years to swallow up the Earth. And then 2012, we're all going to die. Yeah.
Yeah. That, and well, some people still believe that could be possible. But even more than that, the idea that this might open up an interdimensional wormhole of some sort.
Yes.
So we are going to talk. We will talk about that
later on. Yeah.
But first, we should probably get into some of the interesting symbolism and history surrounding.
It's fascinating.
Surrounding CERN.
For as little as I've really looked up on CERN, I'm going to be honest here. The more every time we talk about it, I mean, I know enough, but I can actually add a little bit more, like, because it's really interesting to me. I mean, but overall, CERN is like the one thing I haven't really studied a lot of.
Well, that's okay. I don't think a whole lot of people have, and that's why I'm glad that we have the opportunity to do these kinds of shows.
I actually enjoy doing the CERN ones quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think that if we have now, I'm not saying that everything that they do is right or good or blessed by God. You know, I'm not gonna,
so many blessings.
Yeah, so many blessings. I would never say that, but I think that if we have a base understanding of how the LHC works and what it does, it can kind of help dispel some of the really out there myths, like,
oh my goodness, yes,
like the Earth is going to be in a black hole and no prophecy is going to be fulfilled because the black hole is going to rip everything apart. You know, that kind of stuff.
We already know how it ends.
Yeah, we have the book. We know the end of the story. But I think understanding some of the science. But there are good reasons that people are worried about this thing, and I mean it even goes back into the ancient past. CERN actually was built on, and this is something that Tom Horn and Chris Putnam have talked about in Path of the Immortals. Tom and I are talking about in a upcoming book.
Yep.
But CERN was actually built over a Roman city called Apolliacum, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And the people of that city regarded the god, the false god, Apollo. Interestingly enough, that ties back to Revelation, which we'll be getting into later on in the show. But now there are other areas within this whole thing that have people nervous, that might be signs that something nefarious is going on, like the Shiva statue.
Yeah, god of destruction.
Yeah, and we talked, when was it, last week or the week before? I think it was last week. We talked about the Vedic text and the Mahabharata and the Bhagavata
extra-dimensional UFOs.
Yeah, exactly. Interestingly enough, it's the ancient Indian false god, we would say Shiva, that's the statue right in front of CERN, and it's the god of destruction.
Yep.
So
one of the many gods that came off of those things.
Yeah, kind of an ominous, weird thing to have in front of your building. But apparently it was a gift, and they accepted it, and so maybe it is just that, but maybe they're just being nice. Yeah, maybe there is something more going on there. Also, interestingly enough, people point out if you look at the CERN logo, apparently you can see three sixes in there. Now, is that a coincidence? Is that like a wink of the enemy saying that, the enemy's fingerprints are all over this? I don't know. It could just be happenstance. We can see things like that, like in the Google Chrome icon.
Right, yeah, exactly. Or the monster can. It's a Vav. Yeah. Which is a 6 in Hebrew. Oh, and interestingly enough, bringing up the whole Vav connection with the 666,
the internet was actually started by CERN.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that.
I didn't know either until I looked it up. But yeah, apparently CERN developed the internet as a means for physicists to share information and communicate and share their findings and stuff all over the world. And then it just developed over time to what we have today. But the idea is when you take the number 666 and translate that to Hebrew because every Hebrew character has a number associated.
Right.
And with 6, it would translate to, it's the Hebrew character Vav. That would translate back to English as 3 V's or 3 W's. Yeah. So www, World Wide Web. Some people kind of make a connection there, but I say I don't know because the text doesn't say 6 and 6 and 6. It doesn't say Vav and Vav and Vav. It's 600, 3 score, and 6. It's the number 666.
And that's the number of man.
Yeah, not 6 and 6 and 6. Right. So now what that would translate to in gematria, I have no idea, but I haven't gone that deep into it. But so there's reasons.
There are some things that they've fooled around with in the past, like trying to say, Nero, his name is 666 in that, or lots of things like that. Well, coincidentally, Yeah, and I think somebody even said something about Bill Clinton or something at one point, and other. I'm sure you can get it out of a lot of things.
Yeah. So with that, that by itself is probably too vague to really extrapolate anything concrete from, but there is still reason that people have some cause for concern, and I can understand that. But as I said before, if we actually look at the science behind what they're doing, it might help kind of ease some of this. But again, we're not saying that it's okay.
No,
we're not saying that everything that they do is great or good or helpful. I mean, they might be opening portals to demonic dimensions.
Well, they talk about wanting to actually communicate with extra dimensional beings now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This is a thing that they want to do.
Yeah, we will get into that a little later. But first, I want to make you aware of a writing contest that you can be a part of if you wish, and I suggest you try it out. It's definitely worth it. So we will be right back.
To celebrate the release of Nita Horn's inspiring new book, No Fences, Skywatch TV would like you to tell your story, because after all, even if you don't think so, you actually have a story.
Send in your story, and we are going to choose the 10 best, and they'll be published for Christmas release in an anthology of those stories, along with the book that you buy that is actually only $19.95. Am I right on that?
That's correct.
For free. Tom Horn, crazy guy, he's throwing in a journal, which on its own, most of these retail for $20 on their own. So this journal is to help you start writing your story. When you buy the book, not only are you going to be enrolled in this, and you can send in your story, but you'll get a plastic pony, you'll get a journal of your own, and the proceeds from the book are going to help fund the studio we're building for Skywatch Women, and Nita Horn is going to be one of our panel members.
The 10 authors who are selected for the anthology, published by Defender Publishing in time for Christmas, will also receive a $500 cash prize.
That'll go a long way at Christmas time, won't it?
Yes, it will. Even if your story is not one of those selected for the anthology, if you've taken the time to write your story, you've left a legacy for your children and for your grandchildren.
Amen to that.
For complete instructions and details on this opportunity, please log on to skywatchtv.com/nofences.
All right, and we are back talking about CERN in prophecy. Now, there are a lot of blogs and various websites out there that have a lot of different theories on how CERN might fit into prophecy. Some of them are very well done. Some, well, we'll just leave it up to you to decide. But so I wanted to talk about that in this show and what the LHC is, what it does. As we stated before, it's the Large Hadron Collider. It's a particle collider.
Yeah.
Basically whizzes particles, protons, at almost the speed of light, 99.999 some odd percent the speed of light.
Yeah.
Collides them together, and other exotic particles come out of that. Then they measure those to see if there's anything new that they didn't know about before, and so that's basically what it does. But it's all based around this idea that we will at some point have to dedicate an entire episode to. But we can get into the basics at least of quantum field theory.
Yeah.
That's what this whole, that's quantum field theory is how this machine even works.
Yeah. Pretty cool stuff. Yeah,
and this is phenomenal. And believe me, I did not understand this the first time I heard it either. So if this is your first time hearing about quantum field theory, and if you don't understand, it's okay. That's not a problem. We will be getting into it in future episodes, and I am coming out with a book with Tom Horn that explains it in better detail than I probably can here, since we're limited on time. But basically, quantum field theory, it's the idea that particles, if we remember back to the string theory episode that we did.
Yeah.
String theory and quantum field theory are almost like close cousins. But instead of strings, you have fields.
Yeah.
Now, basically what a field is, it's more of an idea, really. It's more of like a field is like, it permeates every point in space. It is every point in space. And what a particle is it's a fluctuation in a field. So let's say the magnetic field. We've probably all seen pictures of magnets and iron filings, and when you put the magnets together, you can actually see in the iron filings where the magnetic field is strongest.
Right.
So that, if you think of every point around that, around the magnets as like a value, the higher values where the magnets are closer, it'd be stronger, so you'd have higher values, lower values further away. Another way to think about it is gravity. The closer to the Earth you are, the stronger the gravity is, the further away, the weaker it is. So that's basically what a field is. It's permeates every point in space, and from the field arises the particles. Every fundamental particle has an associated field. So there's an up quark field. There's the electromagnetic field is what produces photons, the particle of light. And again, it permeates every point in space. You can kind of think of it as like if you were submerged in a pool of water, you could think of the water around you as like a water field. You can kind of think of it that way. Now, when we talk about particles arising out of a field, imagine there's an air bubble in front of you. Mm-hmm. That would be like the particle. Saying that a particle is a fluctuation in a quantum field can be confusing at first, because usually when we think of a spike of some sort, like on a graph, we think, again, of a two-dimensional representation.
And not the three-dimensional sphere or something.
So we usually picture like a line with a spike, and then that spike is the particle. But in reality, in three-dimensional reality, a spike happens at every point expanding at once. So that's a sphere. Yep. That's why particles are spheres, basically.
Absolutely.
So that spike, that fluctuation in whatever field, is the actual particle. And I think, if I remember correctly, Brian Greene wrote an excellent book called The Hidden Reality, and in it he said that there are 57 different quantum fields, that different particles. Now, that was, I believe, when that was written, that was before the discovery of the Higgs boson, which we will be talking about in a later episode. So it might be 58. So 57, 58, that's about how many fields there are. So
awesome.
Now, how this ties into the LHC. When we think of colliding two protons together and getting something like a Higgs boson, it would make us think that the parts of the Higgs boson are in the protons. So when the protons collide, but it doesn't work that way. Basically, I think the common public perception of what the LHC does is kind of like a blender. You throw some milk and a banana and some ice into a blender and you make a smoothie. It's not exactly that. It would be more accurate to compare it to a blender. You throw the banana, milk, and ice into a blender, and you get a gold watch.
Yeah, yep.
You get something completely different. So how does that work? Well, it's actually evidence that quantum field theory might be correct. What happens is when they collide protons at these incredible speeds, a lot of force a lot of energy is released from that. That energy actually goes into other quantum fields and makes them ripple, makes them spike. And when a spike happens, again, that spike is the particle. So the idea is that there are probably fields that we don't know about or we haven't discovered yet.
Right.
So when we add energy to those fields, a particle can come out that they can detect. That's actually how they detected the Higgs boson.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you have two pianos, one in different rooms. You play a piano in one room and you can kind of hear it resonate in the other piano of the other room.
Yeah.
It's an excellent analogy by Sean Carroll. I want to give credit where it's due. Brilliant physicist.
Very awesome.
Yeah. But that's kind of how this works. So this energy gets spread into these other fields, creates ripples, and out of it arises new particles.
Yeah.
Some people take issue with that.
I know.
Because they're afraid, which I can understand, and which if we're not going to have time in this episode, but maybe the next episode we can get into the Higgs field doomsday scenario.
Right, yep.
There are people that are worried that if we add energy into these fields, something catastrophic could happen, specifically in the Higgs field for reasons we'll get into later. So there is legitimate reasons for people to be concerned, but the chances of right now with what they're doing at the energy level that they're doing it at, it's comparable to cosmic rays entering our atmosphere.
Right, exactly.
It's not really anything that nature isn't already doing, but that doesn't mean that we should be doing it.
Right. No, exactly. You shouldn't be messing around with things. I know in an earlier episode, we did talk about the fact that it could be a form of alchemy.
Because alchemy is taking one substance and creating another substance that's completely different, say lead into gold. This is quantum alchemy. I mean, you're taking a proton that has nothing to do with a Higgs boson, and you're creating a Higgs boson out of it.
Yep.
So, it is, for all intents and purposes, it is a form of alchemy. Mm-hmm. And that's not good.
No. No, it's not.
So there are good reasons for people to be concerned. Now, whether this is going to create a black hole that's going to envelop the Earth, I'd say probably not, because, again, we can look at Bible prophecy and
we
understand,
know what is going to happen.
Yeah, and there's nothing like that.
No.
Now, what we'll be talking about next week, the Higgs field doomsday thing, that actually might be.
It's close because, things burning with a fervent heat and, things
and it
like that.
says the elements. And when you actually take that back to the original language, which would be Greek in that case, it's the elementary building blocks of existence. It's elementary particles.
Yes.
And that those will burn with a fervent heat.
Yep.
But this whole, we're going to have to save that because we only have a few minutes left.
Of course we do.
Once again, there is so much that we could get into that we don't have time for. I do want to quickly, because you already brought it up, and we'll go into more depth in a later episode, but the graviton communication system.
Yep. Now they're I think it's fascinating that science is now to the point that they want to communicate not with extraterrestrial but extra dimensional.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
Once again, kind of like from our previous episode, things are more extra dimensional. And Indiana Jones, the Crystal Skull.
Yeah, the very end.
They're not extraterrestrial. They're extra dimensional.
Yeah, it's weird that they put that in that movie because it didn't have anything to do with the rest of it. But
it was cool.
Yeah.
And that when I saw that, I walked out of that movie like, what?
Yeah. Brian Greene, actually, a few years ago, he narrated a really good quantum physics documentary. I actually really like that documentary because it explains things in a way that people like you and I can understand. And most people would be able to. And so I really liked it. But there was one part somewhere around the middle where he made this really interesting, weird comment. And they only spent a couple minutes in the documentary talking about it. But basically he was saying how physicists today, and that was a few years ago, were talking about the possibility of taking gravitons, which I don't know if they're still considered hypothetical, because recently they discovered gravity waves. They detected them, but still I don't think that they've necessarily detected individual gravitons. So I guess we could still call it a hypothetical particle, but again, because every particle has a field, every field has a particle, because there is a gravitational field, they know that there's a graviton. It has to have a particle. Anyway, the idea is that you can take, because as we talked about in a previous episode, gravitons can flow free between dimensions. The idea is to take a string of gravitons, alter the spin, or do something to create a type of binary code and send it off into a higher dimension. Set up a detector, see if anything replies. Now, for reasons that we're going to have to save for another episode, that might be what invites the angel that has the keys to the bottomless pit to open that thing up and release the locusts.
And that's another thing. Before the show, we kind of talked about this. In Greek mythology, they kind of touched on that. Olympus and Tartarus. And the god came down with the key and released the giants out of the pit. And that was depicted in one of the movies. I can't remember which one, but I know Hercules was involved.
And Tartarus is actually mentioned in the Greek language.
And so that's really fascinating to me, that even the Greek depiction of it, it's almost like the same, like the same story that we have in our Bible.
It's their perception of it, but yeah. So when we look at the Bible and get the real thing, and for so many reasons that we don't have time for, this actually might be a prophetic event that happens. So, very brief, basic overview of how CERN might play a role in prophecy. Something we will definitely have to get into in later episodes. But we have about a minute left. Where can people find the show?
You can find us on Roku, if you have Roku. Skywatchtv.com has some information on our show and a bunch of other great articles and things. And our show is on youtube.com/skywatchtv_official.
Fantastic. And if you have any questions or comments or suggestions for future shows, you can email me at jpeck@skywatchtv.com. I'll be happy to consider your suggestions and read your questions, maybe even read them on air. We will see. But I'd love to hear what you have to say. Now, also, if you go to skywatchtvstore.com, you can get my 2 books, Quantum Creation, Cherubim Chariots, $29.95, which is normally a $40 value. It'll help put a lot of these things into perspective, as will future episodes. So stay with us. Next week, we're going to be talking more about the Higgs boson, the Higgs field, if we have time, the Higgs field doomsday scenario. Very interesting episode. You won't want to miss it. So for my beautiful wife, Christina Peck, and for myself, Josh Peck, I'd like to thank you again for joining us into the multiverse. As always, take care and God bless.
From the time she was little, Nita dreamed of horses. Every childhood fantasy rode on the back of a heroic white steed, coming to save the day.
I don't know how long I've had this love in my heart for horses. It's just always been there. And when we were little girls, my sister and I would play all day long. I was always the white horse and she was always the little pink pig.
Let's pretend Lightning and Rosie can fly.
But everything changed in a heartbeat. On December 9th, 1971, a tragic car accident claimed the life of my dad and my best friend and my little sister. And I wondered after that if there was anything left to believe in.
Move aside, let the ambulance through. Please move aside.
As a child of 13, I felt like I had lost practically everything. And I wondered, is this it? I mean, where do I go from here? I could not have imagined back then how God could use horses, of all things, to restore my faith and vision for the future.
Starting April 19th, get your copy of Nita Horn's inspirational new book, No Fences, and learn for the first time her amazing story of loss, survival, determination, and healing. How the vision and love God gave her for these beautiful and majestic animals eventually led to the 150-acre Whispering Ponies Ranch, a general retreat facility, as well as a premier training location that specializes in using and gifting therapeutic animals to benefit the hurting. Other care facilities, schools, and ministries across the nation.
When God puts something in your heart, it's there for a lifetime.